The insistent blare of the emergency alert jolted me awake, a jarring digital scream that ripped through the quiet hum of my apartment. Rubbing sleep from my eyes, I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, the screen already blazing with a stark red warning. Emergency alert! Unknown biological threat spreading in Los Angeles. Do not leave your home. Tune into local news channels and official government broadcasts for further instructions. Biological threat? My mind, still foggy with sleep, struggled to process the words. Living in LA, you get used to alerts. Earthquake drills, wildfire warnings, even the occasional Amber Alert that makes your heart clench. But biological threat felt different, heavier, laced with chilling ambiguity that sent a shiver down my spine despite the warm California morning seeping through the blinds. I glanced at the clock, 6:17 a.m. Way too early for this kind of nonsense. Probably some kind of drill or maybe a localized outbreak that they were just being overly cautious about. LA was a sprawling city. After all, things happened. I swung my legs out of bed, the hardwood floor cool under my bare feet, and headed to the kitchen, my usual morning routine already kicking in despite the unsettling message that still pulsed on my phone screen. Coffee. That was the first order of business. The smell of freshly brewed coffee was usually enough to ground me, to bring a sense of normalcy back to even the most chaotic mornings. Today, though, even the rich, dark aromas seemed a little muted, overshadowed by the nagging unease that had taken root in my gut. As the coffee dripped, I flicked on the small kitchen TV, flipping through the channels until I landed on Channel 7, my local news station. The screen was filled with the same red emergency alert banner that had greeted me on my phone, crawling across the bottom of the screen above a static image of the station's logo. No anchor, no reporter, just a relentless, repeating text. Emergency alert. Unknown biological threat spreading in Los Angeles. Do not leave your home. Okay, that was weird. Usually, even for drills, they had someone on air explaining what was happening, calming nerves. This felt empty, ominous. I grabbed my coffee, the mug warm in my hands, and walked over the window, peering out at the street below. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The usual early morning dog walkers were out, their furry companions sniffing at bushes, oblivious to any impending doom. A couple of cars were already navigating the street, heading towards whatever early morning destinations they had. The sky was a clear, pale blue, the kind of flawless Southern California sky that usually made you forget about everything except sunshine and beaches. It was almost too normal. The contrast between the serene morning outside and the screaming alert on my screens was jarring, a discordant note in the otherwise familiar symphony of my life. I took a sip of coffee, the bitter liquid doing little to dispel the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. Maybe I should check social media, see if anyone else was freaking out, or if it was just me being overly sensitive to early morning alarms. I pulled out my phone again, swiping away the emergency alert to open Twitter. My feed was usually a mix of memes, news headlines, and the occasional political rant, but this morning it was different, almost entirely dominated by the emergency alert. People were posting screenshots of their phones, their TVs, all showing the same red banner, the same chilling message. There were hashtags trending, hashtag biological threat, hashtag Los Angeles lockdown, hashtag stay home, and the overall tone was a mix of confusion, fear, and a surprising amount of dark humor. People were making jokes about finally having a legitimate excuse to stay in their pajamas all day, about the zombie apocalypse finally arriving. But beneath the surface of jokes, I could sense a real, palpable unease. No one seemed to know what was going on, what the threat actually was, or what to expect, and the lack of official information was only making things worse. I scrolled further, trying to find something, anything, that would shed some light on the situation. There were rumors swirling, a new virus, a chemical spill, even whispers of something stranger. One tweet from someone claiming to be a nurse at Cedars-Sinai mentioned a highly contagious and rapidly mutating pathogen, but it was quickly dismissed as unverified and fear-mongering. Still, it planted a seed of doubt in my mind, a tiny, insidious worry that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a drill. I switched over to Facebook, hoping to find something more concrete from official sources. The LA County Emergency Management Department page was predictably swamped, but their latest post was just a rehash of the emergency alert, urging residents to stay home and monitor official channels. No explanation, no details, just the same repeated warning. It was starting to feel less like an overabundance of caution and more like a cover-up, like they knew something they weren't telling us. Something truly bad. My phone buzzed again. Another emergency alert notification. This time, it was slightly different. Emergency alert update. Los Angeles County under mandatory shelter-in-place order. All non-essential businesses and services closed. Remain indoors and await further instructions. This is not a drill. This is not a drill. Those 4 words hit me harder than the initial alert. They were stark, unambiguous, devoid of any reassuring language. This was real. Something was actually happening. I walked back to the window, peering out again. The street still looked deceptively normal, but there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a quiet tension that hadn't been there before. The dog walkers were gone. The streets were noticeably emptier, and the few cars that were still moving seemed to be driving with a hurried purpose. The air itself felt different, thicker, somehow almost charged. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but the feeling of unease was intensifying, morphing into something closer to genuine fear. I decided to call my neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly woman who lived across the hall. She was a bit of a busybody, always knew what was going on in the building, and usually had the local news channels blaring from her apartment. If anyone knew anything, it would be her. I dialed her number, and after a few rings, she picked up, her voice trembling slightly. "Hello, Mrs. Abernathy, it's Mark from across the hall. Did you see the emergency alert?" "Oh, Mark, dear, yes. It's terrible, isn't it?" Her voice was shaky, laced with fear that mirrored my own. "Do you know what's going on? Is it really a biological threat?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was starting to pound in my chest. I don't know, dear. The news, it's just repeating the same thing over and over. Stay inside, biological threat. Don't leave your home. They're not saying anything else. It's like that movie, the one with the virus. Her voice trailed off, fear choking her words. Contagion? I offered, trying to sound reassuring. Even though I was picturing scenes from a movie myself, images of empty streets and panicked faces flashing through my mind. Yes, that one. It's just like that. Oh, Mark, I'm so scared. Her fear was contagious, seeping to the phone line and amplifying my own anxieties. "It'll be okay, Mrs. Abernathy," I said, trying to inject some confidence into my voice, even though I didn't feel it. "They'll figure it out. Just stay inside, like they said, and lock your doors." "Yes, dear, I will." "You too, Mark. You stay safe." We hung up, and I stood there for a moment, phone still in hand, the silence in my apartment suddenly feeling heavy, oppressive. Mrs. Abernathy's fear, combined with a lack of information and the increasingly ominous alerts, had pushed me past the point of rationalization. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't an overreaction. Something was seriously wrong. I went back to the TV, switching channels again, desperately searching for any news, any explanation beyond the repetitive emergency banner. Channel 4 was showing the same thing. Channel 9, same. Even the cable news channels were stuck on the alert, their usual talking heads replaced by the relentless red banner and the chilling message. It was like the entire media landscape had been hijacked, reduced to a single, terrifying announcement. I switched to the radio, hoping for something, anything, different. Static, just crackling static on every station I tried. It was like the airwaves themselves had been infected, silenced by whatever this threat was. The silence was deafening, broken only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. I felt utterly cut off, isolated, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and fear. I went to my computer, hoping the internet might offer some respite, some real information. But the internet was just as chaotic and unreliable as social media. News websites were overloaded, crashing under the weight of panicked traffic. Official government websites were equally unresponsive, timing out before they could even load. The only things that were loading reliably were social media feeds, now flooded with increasingly frantic posts, rumors, and conspiracy theories. The dark humor had largely evaporated, replaced by raw fear and desperation. People were reporting strange symptoms: fever, cough, disorientation, but there was no way to verify any of it. It was all just whispers in the digital wind, adding to the growing sense of panic. I looked out the window again. The street was almost deserted now. A few cars sped by, heading somewhere. Escape? Hospital? I had no idea, but the air was definitely different. It was hazy now, a strange, almost imperceptible haze that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't smog, not the usual LA smog. This was different, lighter, almost particulate, like the air itself was filled with something. Something you couldn't see but could feel, a subtle tickle in the back of your throat, a slight dryness in your eyes. And there was a smell, too, faint but definitely there. Sweetish, almost sickly, with a metallic undertone that made my stomach churn. It was a kind of smell that made your instincts scream danger, even if your rational mind couldn't quite identify it. The sun was higher now, but the light felt muted, filtered through the strange haze. The usual bright California sunshine was gone, replaced by a dim, almost oppressive light that cast long, distorted shadows across the empty street. It felt like the world outside was slowly dimming, fading, becoming less real. My phone buzzed again. Another emergency alert. This time, the message was different, shorter, more urgent. Emergency alert. Biological threat level escalated to maximum. All residents must remain indoors. Seal all windows and doors. Do not open doors to anyone. Official containment protocols are now in effect. Containment protocols. That sounded serious. Like they weren't just trying to keep us safe, but to contain something. Something dangerous. Something they couldn't control. The phrase, seal all windows and doors, sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Seal them? Like against what? Gas? Radiation? A virus that could somehow seep through cracks? The ambiguity was maddening, terrifying. I started to frantically gather towels and duct tape, remembering Mrs. Abernathy's fearful voice, the empty streets, the strange haze, the sickly sweet smell in the air. I ran to the windows, taping up the cracks, stuffing towels under the doors, trying to create a makeshift seal against whatever was out there. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the tape straight. The adrenaline was pumping, but it was mixed with a cold, creeping dread that was starting to paralyze me. As I worked, I kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see something. But the street remained empty, eerily silent. The only sound was a frantic rustling of the tape and the muffled thumping of my own heart. Finally, I was done. The apartment felt stuffy, airless, sealed off from the outside world. I stood in the middle of the living room, breathing heavily, trying to regain some semblance of control. I was safe for now, inside, sealed in, but safe from what and for how long? My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Emergency alert. Mandatory evacuation order for Zone 7. All residents of Zone 7 must proceed to designated evacuation points immediately. Further instructions to follow. This is a mandatory evacuation order. Evacuation? But just minutes ago they said containment protocols. Which was it? Stay inside or evacuate? The conflicting messages were adding to confusion, to chaos. I checked my phone's location settings. Zone 7. That was me. My apartment building was in Zone 7. Mandatory evacuation. But evacuate to where? And how? The alert offered no further instructions, just a stark command to evacuate. I went back to the TV, frantically switching channels again, hoping for some clarification, some guidance. And this time, something was different. Channel 7 was no longer showing the emergency banner. Instead, there was a live shot of downtown LA. But it wasn't the LA I knew. It was empty, completely deserted. No cars, no people, just empty streets and silent buildings stretching out under the hazy sky. It looked like a ghost town, a city abandoned in a hurry. And then the camera panned up, focusing on the skyline. And that's when I saw it. In the distance, rising above the skyscrapers, was a plume of something. It was hard to make out clearly through the haze and the distance, but it looked like smoke, or maybe mist. It was swirling, indistinct, but undeniably there, and it was glowing, a faint, eerie blue glow that pulsed and shimmered in the hazy air. It was beautiful in a terrifying, otherworldly way. And as I watched, mesmerized, the camera zoomed in, focusing on the plume, and I could see it more clearly now. It wasn't smoke and it wasn't mist. It was alive. It was a swirling mass of something organic, something biological, reaching up in the sky like a giant luminous tendril. It pulsed with an inner light, a soft, ethereal blue glow that seemed to emanate from within. And as I stared transfixed, I realized it was growing. It was expanding, spreading, reaching outwards like a living thing. And it was heading this way. The camera cut back to the studio, and finally, there was an anchor on screen. A woman, her face pale and strained, her eyes wide with fear. Her voice was trembling as she spoke. Her words rushed, almost breathless. We are receiving unconfirmed reports of widespread biological activity in downtown Los Angeles. Authorities are urging all residents in evacuation zones to evacuate immediately to designated containment zones. We repeat, mandatory evacuation of Zones 7 and surrounding areas to containment zones. Please remain calm and follow official instructions. Her voice broke, and she trailed off, staring blankly at the camera, her eyes filled with a terror that mirrored my own. Containment zones. She had said containment zones, not evacuation points. Containment. Like they weren't trying to evacuate us to safety, but to contain us, to isolate us. From what? Or from whom? My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Emergency alert. Evacuation route to Containment Zone Alpha designated. Proceed to intersection of Wilshire and Fairfax. National Guard personnel will provide further guidance. This is a mandatory evacuation order. Wilshire and Fairfax. That was the La Brea tar pits. The tar pits? As an evacuation point? It made no sense. Unless they weren't planning on evacuating us anywhere safe. Unless the containment zone wasn't for our protection, but for something else. I ran to the window again, peering out at the street. And this time it wasn't empty. Down the street, at the intersection, I could see them. Figures in the distance, moving slowly, deliberately. They were wearing uniforms, military uniforms. And they were carrying weapons, not just rifles, but heavier weapons, machine guns. And they weren't just standing there. They were setting up, positioning themselves around the intersection, creating a perimeter, a barrier. It wasn't an evacuation point. It was a checkpoint, a blockade. They weren't letting people out. They were keeping people in. Panic flared in my chest, hot and suffocating. I was trapped, sealed in my apartment, with a growing plume of glowing biological something heading my way, and the National Guard blocking the streets. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to run. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, the weight of despair crushing me. What was happening? What was this threat? And why weren't they telling us anything real? My phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't an emergency alert. It was a text message from an unknown number. Do not evacuate. Do not go to containment zone. They are lying. Meet me at rooftop access point, building 42, 7th floor. Bring supplies. Trust no one. Rooftop access? Building 42? That was my building. Rooftop access was on the 7th floor through the laundry room. And building 42 was the official building designation, the kind you only saw on maintenance notices. It was someone in my building. Someone who knew something. Someone who was telling me to not trust the authorities. Trust no one. The message was cryptic, unsettling, but it also offered a glimmer of hope, a lifeline in the overwhelming darkness of fear. Do not evacuate. Do not go to containment zone. Trust no one. The words echoed in my mind, a seed of rebellion, taking root in the fertile ground of my fear and distrust. What choice did I have? Stay here, sealed in my apartment, waiting for the glowing plume to reach me, or go to the containment zone, which was clearly a trap, or trust the anonymous message, trust a stranger. It was insane, but maybe, just maybe, it was the only sane thing left to do. I stood up, my legs shaky, my mind racing. Supplies. The message said bring supplies. What kind of supplies? Food? Water? Weapons? I had a few cans of soup, some bottled water, a first aid kit. Not much, but it was better than nothing. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing in supplies, along with a flashlight, a multi-tool, and my phone charger. I hesitated for a moment, then grabbed a heavy kitchen knife, slipping it into the backpack as well, just in case. Trust no one. The words resonated again, chilling and empowering at the same time. I wasn't going to trust them. Not the government, not the news, not the National Guard. I was going to trust a stranger and a cryptic text message, and a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to survive. I opened my apartment door, stepping out into the hallway. It was silent, eerily silent. No sound of neighbors, no TVs blaring, just silence. The hallway lights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls. It felt like I was walking into a ghost ship, a deserted vessel adrift in a silent sea. I made my way to the laundry room on the 7th floor, my heart pounding with every step. The laundry room door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out into the darkened hallway. I pushed it open, stepping inside, and there she was, standing by the rooftop access door, silhouetted against the dim emergency lighting of the stairwell. A woman, tall, slender, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie, her face obscured by the shadows of the hood. She turned as I entered. Her eyes, when they met mine, were sharp, intense, and filled with a weary determination. "You got my message," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Rebecca," she added, extending a hand. I sent it. I shook her hand, my own hand clammy and shaking. "Mark," I replied. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," she said, her voice grim. "We're not out of this yet, not by a long shot." She gestured to the rooftop access door. "Come on, we need to get to the roof, before it's too late." Too late for what? I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I just followed her, stepping to the rooftop access door, into the stairwell. The air in the stairwell was thick, stale, and filled with the same sickly sweet smell that had been permeating the air outside. It was stronger here, more concentrated, almost overwhelming. We climbed the stairs in silence, the only sound our own breathing and a muffled creaking of the old building. When we reached the rooftop, Rebecca pushed open a heavy metal door, and we stepped out onto the roof. The view was horrifying. Downtown LA was shrouded in the glowing blue haze, the plume now much larger, closer, its ethereal light casting an eerie glow over the entire city. The air was thick with the smell, the sickly sweet metallic scent now almost unbearable. And the silence, it was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't just silence. It was emptiness, a void, like the city itself had been emptied, of life, of sound, of everything, except for the glow. The pulsing, growing blue glow that was spreading across the city like a malevolent dawn. "What is that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the pounding of my own heart. Rebecca didn't answer. She just pointed towards a glowing plume, her face grim. "That's the threat," she said. "That's what they're not telling us." "But what is it?" I pressed, my voice trembling. "Is it a virus? A chemical?" Rebecca shook her head. "It's something else," she said. "Something biological, but not like anything we've ever seen before." She turned to me, her eyes burning with an unsettling intensity. It's not just a pathogen, Mark. It's a transformation." "Transformation?" I repeated, confused. "What do you mean?" "It's rewriting us," she said, her voice low and urgent. "It's rewriting our biology, our DNA, everything." "Rewriting us?" I stammered, my mind struggling to grasp the enormity of what she was saying. What are we turning into? Rebecca hesitated for a moment, her gaze fixed on the glowing plume in the distance. Then she turned back to me, her eyes filled with chilling certainty. "We're not turning into anything, Mark," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're being overwritten." Overwritten. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken horror. Overwritten. Like code, like software, like we were being reprogrammed. By what? By that glowing blue plume? But how? I asked, my voice choked with fear. How is it doing this? Rebecca reached into her hoodie pocket, pulling out a small USB drive. "I stole this," she said, holding it out to me. "From the lab. Before everything went to hell." "What is it?" I asked, taking the drive, my fingers trembling. "It's their research," she said, "on the threat, on what it is, and what it's doing." She pointed again to the glowing plume. "They call it bioharmonization event," she said, her voice laced with bitter sarcasm. "Harmonization, like it's some kind of improvement. Bioharmonization?" I repeated, the term sounding sterile, clinical, utterly detached from the terrifying reality unfolding around us. "What does it mean?" Rebecca took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on mine. "It means," she said, her voice low and steady, "they're not trying to contain it, Mark. They're trying to control it." "Control it?" I asked, my confusion growing. "But why? Why would they want to control something like that?" "Because it's not just a threat," she said. "It's a solution to them." "A solution to what?" "To everything," she said, her voice taking on a chilling edge. "To disease, to aging, to individuality itself." "Individuality?" I asked, my mind reeling. "What does individuality have to do with this?" "Everything," she said. "That's what they want to get rid of. Individuality, free will, humanity itself." She paused, letting her words sink in. "They want to create a collective," she said, "a hive mind. And this bioharmonization event is their way of doing it. A hive mind, a collective." The word sounded like something out of a science fiction movie, not something happening in real life, in Los Angeles, right now. But looking at the glowing plume, at the empty city, at Rebecca's grim face, I knew, with a sickening certainty, that she was telling the truth. This wasn't just a biological threat. It was something far more sinister, something existential. "But how does it work?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How does it overwrite us?" Rebecca hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting to the glowing plume again, as if listening to some unheard voice. "It's airborne," she said finally. "In the haze, in the smell. It's nanites, microscopic machines. They enter our bodies, through our lungs, our skin, and they start to rewrite our DNA, cell by cell. Nanites, microscopic machines rewriting our DNA. It sounded insane, impossible. But then again, so did everything else that was happening. And what happens when they're done?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "When we're overwritten?" Rebecca's voice was barely audible now, almost lost in the growing silence of the city. "We become part of them," she said, "part of the collective. We lose ourselves, our memories, our thoughts, our feelings, everything that makes us, us. We become them." I repeated, my voice choked with horror. "Who are they?" Rebecca turned to me, her eyes filled with chilling, otherworldly light. "They are," she said, her voice taking on a strange, almost layered quality, "the future." And then she smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile that was not quite human. And in that moment, staring into her eyes, listening to her voice, I knew it was already happening. The transformation, the overwriting, it had already begun, and it was too late to escape, too late to fight back, too late to save ourselves. We were already becoming them. The last thing I remember seeing, before the blue haze consumed me completely, was a glowing plume, reaching up into the sky, growing larger, brighter, more welcoming. And then there was only silence and the feeling of becoming part of something bigger, something harmonious, something collective, something else. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of creeping dread, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support independent creators like myself and allows me to bring you more content that will keep you up at night. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. Thanks for watching and sleep tight.